Hey guys, welcome to week 6. So this week we're going to cover chapter 4 in our textbooks, which is all about elasticity. And there's really two different types of elasticity, and the book doesn't do a very good job of distinguishing between the two. The first type, the type that's involved in your discussion question, is sort of general elasticity, which just means how responsive is quantity demanded to changes in price. So something that has a really steep demand curve, you could get a big price change and the response in quantity demanded is going to be relatively small. But if you have a really flat demand curve, then a small change in price is going to give you a huge change in demand. And so there's a part in your book that talks about sort of the sources of elasticity or the causes of elasticity. It's like substitution possibilities, how much time you have, and the share of your budget. And so these are the type of elasticities that I want to talk about in your discussion post when I say name one type of good that has elastic demand and another type that has inelastic demand. What I'm really talking about is name a good that has a steep demand curve and a curve that has a flat demand curve. Now the second type of elasticity, the one that's more focused on in your textbook and will be more involved in your homework and probably the Learn Smart, is price elasticity of demand. And now this is the elasticity that's measured at a particular point on the demand curve or at a particular price. And so calculating that is going to be using a formula. So the percentage change in quantity divided by the percentage change in price. If you have two prices and two quantities, you'll use that formula. Or alternatively, you can use price divided by quantity times 1 over the slope. And that's the formula you would use if I'm asking you for the elasticity at a point on a graph. And so the thing with the second type of elasticity, the price elasticity of demand, it doesn't matter how steep or shallow the demand curve is. The bottom half is always going to have an elasticity less than 1. The top half is always going to have an elasticity greater than 1. And so the two types of elasticities are sort of, the difference is subtle, but it's rather important that you understand that with price elasticity of demand, it doesn't matter if the curve's really steep, you're still going to have an elastic and an inelastic region of that demand curve. And when I talk about general elasticity, all I'm talking about is an inelastic good has a steep demand curve and elastic good has a shallow one. All right, this week we're also going to have a podcast assignment. I need you to listen to a podcast and you're going to do a write-up and sort of submit the write-up. It needs to be around 500 words, which is just 1 page typed. So listen to the podcast, just give me an idea of, summarize it so I understand that you listened to it. And then I'd also like you to include a paragraph that tells me what you were able to understand in the podcast now that you probably wouldn't have understood before you took this class. You're going to find that in these few short weeks we've covered, most of the main material that has to do with understanding economics. And so now that we've covered the first 3 chapters, you should be able to listen to this podcast and sort of understand some of the economic concepts that they're talking about. So those are your assignments for this week. You've got the Learn Smart for Chapter 4, the discussion question about inelastic versus elastic demand, and then you've got the podcast assignment. And I've included a short video which sort of shows you how to navigate the podcast website. But I think the easiest way for the podcast is just to download them to your smartphone using the podcast app. And then you can just search the word Econ Talk, which is one word, and you'll be able to listen to the podcast right on your smartphone. And then that way you can listen to it on the go or in your car and not have to be sitting in front of the computer for an hour. All right, have a great week. Talk to you next time.